My next guest is Betsy Springer. Betsy works as an instructional coach and an ELA teacher for the Gull Lake Virtual Partnership, a division of innovative programs in the Gull Lake Community School District in Southwest Michigan. Betsy holds a BS in secondary ed and MED in instructional tech and is a doctoral candidate in ed policy. Her favorite things are her family, coffee, and doing what others say can't be done. Welcome to the podcast, Betsy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat today.
Well, as I start off with everybody, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
All right, I gave this a lot of thought and I tried to simplify my story of out of the trenches, and I don't think I can. It takes some twists and turns on its way out. I think it starts back with me as a student, and I loved school and I was a good student and I did well in school, and that had a big impact in me wanting to go into education and be a teacher. My teachers were my heroes growing up in a small rural school in Western Ohio. And so that's what I imagined I would do. And then life had other plans. So we had our first child who has special needs. So I made the decision to exit the classroom and stay home with her. And that was a great experience, but very humbling, trying to figure out how to balance all of her needs and our family and what that would mean for us. And it was anyone with a special needs child, and her needs are educational and health. And it's just very much a moving target as far as what our goals are, and 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And in the process of addressing her educational needs, I found the Gull Lake Virtual Partnership, and I enrolled her first as an art student. And then I really enjoyed the program, really enjoyed the staff that were there, and expressed interest in working part-time, with my daughter still being my priority. And part-time developed into half-time, and my career as a teacher just took this very unexpected turn in that I became an online teacher for the virtual school that they were expanding there as a full-time school that students enrolled in full-time. So I was their first teacher, and I was a staff of 1, and I had 2 students, and the next year I had 16 students, and it's grown from there. That's what inspired me to go into educational technology. And then as I consulted around the state of Michigan and helped other people start similar programs, I became more involved in policy and understanding how it is that schools are governed and held accountable. And so that has led me into my doctoral work. And so kind of out of the trenches has just been me pursuing this career as an online teacher, because it's not the path that I envisioned when I went into education. I didn't have any what do I want to say, desire to kind of go away from the traditional classroom. And it was really my personal circumstances that led me down that path. But I have really enjoyed interacting with different students and very creative and unique educators in a very kind of innovative way.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear how, enrolling your student or your daughter in the virtual partnership that you involved working there, and how it's grown also since you started. So you talked to me a little bit in the pre-chat about your current position as an instructional coach. And this, you said it was a school within a district outside Kalamazoo, but there was a program before you got there. And then tell me a little bit about how it grew and kind of what the current state of your school is, and also what you do as an instructional coach within that partnership.
Absolutely. I love talking about our school here. So our school, Gull Lake Virtual Partnership, is a program within our local school district, Gull Lake Community Schools, which is in Richland, Michigan, which is outside of Kalamazoo, our nearest large city. And it started in 2010 as a way to address the virtual class needs of students that were in our district. So they were in our traditional high school, and they had a computer lab time where they took online classes. Prior to 2010, they took them from the statewide catalog through Michigan Virtual, and the district had a desire to use their own staff to teach these classes for their own students and keep it in-house to increase, the student connection to the teacher and vice versa. And so they asked me to do that for 2 students, and those students would take all of their classes online. So that was a new modality that they wouldn't be at the high school, and they would be remote, and I would be the teacher. And so I did that for those 2 students on an experimental basis, and it grew by word of mouth. In the second year, it was 16 students. We had a few support staff in the role of mentor, and me as the only teacher, and we had a half-time principal who was principal of all of the innovative programs, including our alternative high school that they also had, that was a separate thing. And then the third year, it grew to 45 students. So at that point, they added 2 more teachers and myself and the part-time principal. And after 5 years, it had grown to the point where we had our own principal. They hired a full-time administrator. And I think we were closing in on 75 students and a few part-time teachers. Currently, we have a staff of 50. I think that's 26 certified teachers, full and part-time. And we have about 400 FTE. We have students who take a full load. We have part-time students. We have homeschool students that take electives. And then we still do support those students in the high school that need online classes for whatever reason. If they've already taken the class and it's not offered at a time, they can take it. Or if it's just a class that they're interested in that's not offered. So we have around 400 full-time equivalency. So that's, adding all the part-time students, the full-time students together, about 200 full-time students, I would say, and some part-timers. And then, so I was the first teacher, and initially it was my availability and my interest in doing this new role that nobody really knew how it worked or what my expectations were, what the commitment would be. And so we just made it up as we went. We call those first 3 years the Wild Wild West days, because we really didn't, every time we had to do something, when they had to do a teacher evaluation using the district's rubric, we were trying to figure out, well, how do I show evidence that we did X, Y, or Z, because we hadn't had to do that for an online teacher before. So I became a de facto coach as we brought on new teachers to let them know what to expect, to get them acclimated and trained in our processes and in our systems. And as we tried to define what I did, so I was hired as an ELA teacher. That's what my certification is in, but I did all of these other staff support things as more and more teachers came on. So we eventually were able to codify that and define it as an instructional coach role. So I do that now with all of our certified staff. I do trainings quarterly. We do the lunch and learn process where we talk about teaching methods. I also do course reviews because we write a lot of our own content. So as teachers write content, I will review it and help them to, improve it and make sure they're checking all the boxes, and just that it's the best that it can be. And also keeping abreast of what online teaching is, because a lot of people we know in the last few years think they know what it is, and then when you go to do it, it's always its own thing. It's definitely has all of the aspects of really great classroom teaching with a little bit of a twist. And so it's, helping teachers to do that and to support them as they figure out what that looks like for them. Because we really want to invest in our staff and then retain our staff and not have them feel overwhelmed.
Did you see a big increase in not only students but also staff once schools went back in person? A lot of people want to kind of work for your collaborative.
We saw a lot of variability in the last 2 to 3 years. We had a huge influx of enrollment during the beginning of the pandemic because our school at that time was closing in on 10 years in operation. So a lot of people were really attracted to all that we had to offer and that we had been offering. We weren't kind of learning on the fly. But then our staff also really reached out, especially within our county, to support a lot of remote learning and mentored a lot of teachers in other districts. So we were able to share what we knew with others. I think we were a little surprised that we weren't able to do that more. We definitely thought this would be our opportunity to share our expertise in having, a decade of this under our belt, and just the circumstances of everyone's life kind of prevented that from happening. There were just, it's kind of, it relates to my out of the trenches story that none of these, stressors happen in a bubble and life's just moving along while you're trying to figure this out. So, but we did see a lot of variability. We learned a lot, and we have seen what we have seen in enrollment follows the trends that I have seen in my policy work across the nation, that we went way up and we came down, but we're still above the enrollment that we were in 2019. So we have seen some net growth, and we've also experienced some changes in demand, the types of students that want virtual school, parents that enjoyed some of the flexibility and they want hybrid options, and we are able to accommodate some of that, and we're actually looking to maybe expand our program in even more directions to offer even more of that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity, like you said, for homeschool students who are looking for electives, for people kind of within, you said, within the whole geographic area of Southwest Michigan. It doesn't really matter if they're kind of within that district, correct? They can still enroll in the program.
Right. Yeah. Students within our district and any geographically contiguous county through Michigan School of Choice law can enroll in our program.
Okay. Yeah. So as we are learning, right, how to better accommodate our students, a lot of the students are also learning what works best for them, and it might not be the traditional seat in the classroom, right? So it's great to have those options available. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your work with DLAC, which is a Digital Learning Annual Conference. So you blog for them, and you also working with specialists. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes, so DLAC is the Digital Learning Annual Conference held every year in February, and it is put on by an organization called the Digital Learning Collaborative. And I know the two acronyms are really similar and they get confusing to people, but I have blogged for the DLC blog and also am the program specialist for the conference. And it started in 2019 as a networking event for online educators and schools, specifically from all over the country. And I think this year we're anticipating more than 1,000 educators, administrators, and support people for the conference in Austin, Texas in February. And it covers a variety of topics: online learning, blended learning, hybrid learning, and a lot of administrators and practitioners, along with companies that support all of those different kinds of learning attend the conference. It's a ton of sessions, a lot of short sessions. It's a very unique format, and a lot of networking opportunities are provided as well. So I've attended every year since 2020 and spoke at the last two. And then this year, I'm excited to help plan the conference that's happening in 2023. And then also working throughout the year with the DLC collaborative and attending webinars. We were able to speak at one of their recent webinars about our student growth numbers for our virtual school, and celebrate how well our students are doing compared to other schools in Michigan. And I've also been able to write for their blog on how schools can help parents support students in a virtual environment, because we have found that's a really important role of a parent learning coach, but it's often one that parents feel a little overwhelmed in. And so I wrote about some interesting research in the biggest impact parents can have on their students, specifically in the virtual classroom, but I would venture to guess it's the same for any student. And the most impactful thing a parent can do is just maintain a positive attitude and encourage their students to problem solve and to keep trying.
Yeah, and it's it's different than the time where everybody was home and parents tried to support their kids because they had to be home. But when a parent and student are choosing to do online, it's just making sure you kind of know the expectations. You have that communication with the teacher, you know where to find these types of things. But it's great also you guys have that conference, especially even though you're online educators, you're having the in-person conference so people can network. It's different like when you're actually meeting the people in person. So and I also connected with you through the Teach Better team. So you've done a blog for them. Are you interested in maybe doing some more blogs as well, and around what topic?
Yes, I have recently found the Teach Better network, and I've really enjoyed the podcasts and the blogs there. And so I have thrown my hat into the ring, I guess, and done my first blog post. I do intend to do more. I do have my own blog. And so trying to navigate all of those different audiences. My topic tends to just center on online learning, and my desire to write about it came about fairly recently. I was on the DLC Proof Points webinar, and I was asked, what does your school do different that you get these, great results? And I was a little stumped because I thought, I don't know how we're different, because I really only know how we do things. And I know they're great, and I know I work with some really great people, but it really inspired me to identify what it is that we do and share that with other people that may be interested in our methods. And so that's really inspired me to get out and network with more groups like the DLC and like the Teach Better team. And I just found them to be, really common-minded about educational philosophy type stuff.
Yeah, definitely getting more blogs about online teaching, since a lot of other educators that were writing about it, they're all kind of in person right now. It's good to have more for support for people like me who are doing part-time tutoring online. It's always good to have those extra tips and tricks. You mentioned in your Trench story that you're now working on a PhD in educational policy. So tell me a little bit about what your research topic will be and when you plan on finishing that up.
Yes, I entered my PhD program in the spring of 2020, which was an interesting time to start anything like that, I guess. And I take it all online. I did my master's online too, and I can tell anybody if they teach online in a full or part-time capacity that they really should be an online student, because it will give you a lot of empathy for your own students. And I relearned some things when I entered my PhD program as an online student. I think it makes me a better online teacher. I initially was looking at seat time as a virtual school. You know, I'm really passionate about the fact that learning happens in a multitude of places and every student learns at a different rate. And the tradition of assigning time to credits is really arbitrary. So I looked at that, and that research topic seemed kind of done when I did my initial literature reviews on it. So I've moved into looking at some funding policy measures, and learned that those get messy really quickly because every state is different. That's why it can be really challenging to consult in, you know, virtual education or any kind of education state to state, because every state is different in some way. And so my current topic is looking at student outcomes in virtual schools, specifically in schools like mine that are within a district, to examine the impact that being in a district has on student outcomes like course completion and like reading and math test scores. Our district started this program more than 10 years ago, feeling that the students would have a richer experience if they had that connection to a local teacher. So that's what I'm looking at to see if you know, the data bears that out, and what other implications that has for, you know, policy of schools having their own virtual program, which a lot of districts are considering post-pandemic because they had one. And while the majority of people wanted to go back to in-person, a lot of different districts found that they did have a significant subset that wanted that as an option going forward. And they're wondering how to do that the most effectively.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of districts have had something or use something with the state, but it's actually, yeah, making sure that the outcomes maybe sometimes are better, or what type of students you serve. So I'll be interested to read more about them. And you said you might be done in a year and a half, spring of 24.
Spring of 24 is my expected completion for my dissertation, which I'm just fully in dissertation writing mode now. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I've had a great chat with you today about online teaching, how you got started in your role, and how you train staff within the virtual collaborative. Of everything we talked about, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
I think my one takeaway is that point that virtual teaching is both unique and it incorporates, you know, the best teaching practices from the classroom. So it really requires a teacher to kind of combine the best of both worlds. And it really provides a unique experience for teachers, maybe like me, and also for students that need that modality. It's not for everyone, but for those that benefit from it, it can be a really rich experience.
Where can people connect with you and find you online?
Yeah, great question. I have a blog, unboxingeducation.blogspot.com, and I am on LinkedIn and Twitter as GLB Springer.
Okay, great. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It was a pleasure talking with you and learning more about changing online education.
Thank you so much for having me, Dana, and I enjoy your podcast. I look forward to hearing more.